On a bright morning in Atlanta, 8-year-old Imani eagerly stepped into the bustling terminal, ready for her very first solo flight. Dressed in a playful outfit that mirrored her vibrant spirit, Imani's eyes sparkled with excitement despite a hint of uncertainty about what lay ahead. Today, she was flying from Atlanta to Tampa on a reputable airline, a journey that promised adventure and a glimpse into the world of air travel. Unbeknownst to most, the flight would soon be marred by an unprovoked act of aggression. As the plane ascended into the sky, a flight attendant named Darlene, whose demeanor would later reveal deep-seated prejudice, launched into unwarranted hostility. In a moment that shattered the innocence of the flight, Darlene assaulted Imani in a manner that was both shocking and inexplicable. Fortunately, fate intervened when Travis, an off-duty FBI agent traveling quietly among the passengers, witnessed the incident. Without hesitation, Travis stepped forward to protect Imani, ensuring that the assault was halted before any further harm could be done. This harrowing moment, unfolding high above the clouds, would leave an indelible mark on Imani's young life and set in motion a series of events aimed at confronting prejudice wherever it might be found. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. If this story made you reflect, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful content. Later that day, as the flight prepared for departure, Imani and her mother, Monique, eagerly boarded a flight for a family gathering in Tampa. The anticipation of reuniting with relatives filled the air, and Imani's joy was palpable. Clad in her favorite yellow dress that seemed to radiate sunshine, Imani carried along her cherished stuffed giraffe, a constant companion that provided comfort and a touch of whimsy. Monique, equally excited yet ever the pillar of calm reassurance, smiled warmly as she guided her daughter through the bustling terminal. The flight was scheduled to last 2.5 hours, a relatively short journey that promised a smooth and enjoyable experience on a reputable airline known for its excellent service. As they made their way to their seats, the duo encountered a mix of families, business travelers, and solo adventurers. Monique's eyes sparkled with the joy of the upcoming reunion, and Imani chattered eagerly about all the things she would do when they landed. Despite the positive atmosphere and the promise of a pleasant flight, there was an undercurrent of tension. The boarding process, though routine, seemed to be punctuated by fleeting glances and hushed murmurs among the crew. Still, Monique reassured Imani that these were just the standard procedures of air travel. The cabin itself was a blend of modern comfort and efficient design, plush seats, gentle lighting, and a quiet hum of anticipation filled the space. As the plane taxied for takeoff, Imani clutched her stuffed giraffe close, her excitement mingled with a curious awareness of the world around her. Monique sat beside her, gently smoothing her daughter's hair and whispering assurances that everything would be just fine. It was a moment of tender intimacy, a brief pause before the adventure truly began. For Monique, this flight was not only a means to join family for a special gathering but also an opportunity to create memories with her daughter, instilling in her the values of joy, resilience, and the simple wonder of travel. The aircraft ascended into the sky, and with it, Imani's laughter and chatter filled the cabin. Every detail, from the soft hum of the engines to the gentle sway of the plane, contributed to an atmosphere of hopeful anticipation. It was a day that promised both reunion and the unfolding of life's unpredictable lessons. A day that would soon take a dramatic turn, testing the strength of a young heart and the resolve of those who loved her. Shortly after takeoff, the pleasant atmosphere in the cabin began to waver subtly. As Imani and Monique settled into their seats, enjoying the gentle hum of the engines, the demeanor of flight attendant Darlene shifted noticeably. At first, her interactions with other passengers were routine and courteous, but when she approached Imani's row, an undercurrent of disdain became unmistakable. Darlene's eyes lingered a little too long on Imani's brightly colored yellow dress and the well-loved stuffed giraffe tucked under her arm. Instead of a warm greeting, her face contorted into an expression of barely concealed irritation. "Are you sure you belong here?" she muttered under her breath, though loud enough for nearby passengers to catch the remark. Imani, with her innocent, wide eyes, couldn't understand why the attendant's tone had grown so cold. Monique, ever vigilant, noticed the subtle shift immediately. She offered Imani a reassuring smile, hoping to diffuse any tension before it could escalate further. However, Darlene's behavior only worsened. Throughout the flight, the attendant made several snide remarks, comments about the casual appearance of Imani and even a dismissive, condescending tone whenever Monique attempted to explain that they were traveling on valid tickets. One instance stood out vividly in the minds of those who witnessed it. As Monique tried to settle Imani with a gentle word, Darlene leaned in and whispered sharply, "This isn't a daycare, we expect a certain standard in first class." Her words, laced with prejudice, cut deep, leaving Imani confused and hurt. The young girl's face crumpled momentarily as she looked up at her mother, unsure of what she had done to warrant such treatment. Throughout the cabin, a few passengers exchanged troubled glances, their expressions revealing a shared disapproval of the attendant's narrow-minded behavior. Some whispered among themselves that the flight attendant's conduct was out of line, yet no one dared to speak up. Monique, trying to maintain a semblance of calm dignity, repeatedly reiterated that their tickets were in order and that they had every right to be in first class. But Darlene's dismissive attitude persisted, each remark reinforcing an unfortunate stereotype that seemed to target Imani's very identity. As the hours passed, the tension escalated incrementally. Darlene continued to hover near the West family's row, scrutinizing Imani's every move with a cold, calculating gaze. At one point, when Imani innocently reached for her favorite book from the seat pocket, Darlene snapped, "Please keep quiet, you're disturbing the other passengers." The remark, though soft-spoken, carried an edge that made Imani flinch and retreat further into herself. Monique's heart ached as she observed her daughter's growing anxiety. She exchanged a few strained words with Darlene, trying to assert that the behavior was uncalled for. Yet, the attendant remained steadfast in her prejudice, as if determined to enforce a standard that Monique and Imani did not, or could not, meet. The conversation was brief, a cold dismissal from Darlene that left Monique feeling powerless in the face of an attitude that was both outdated and discriminatory. In the quiet moments that followed, Imani's eyes grew downcast, and her usual sparkle was dimmed by the weight of the unwanted attention. Monique reached over and gently squeezed her daughter's hand, silently promising that they would endure this moment together. Despite the discomfort, there was a resilience in Imani, a determination to remain joyful even in the midst of cruelty. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her stuffed giraffe, a silent plea for comfort in an unfamiliar environment. Other passengers began to take note of the unfolding situation, their sympathetic expressions a tacit acknowledgement that something was amiss. A few even offered soft, encouraging smiles in passing, a small gesture of solidarity that, while minor, helped to bolster Monique's resolve. She knew that the kindness of strangers could sometimes be the antidote to prejudice, and she quietly hoped that one day, such actions would outweigh the hurtful words she had heard. By the time the flight was well underway, the negative energy had become a palpable presence, a reminder that bias could intrude even in the most secure and ostensibly upscale environments. The incident left a lasting impression on both Monique and Imani, a stark lesson on how the judgments of others, rooted in shallow expectations, could disrupt the simple joys of travel. And as they continued their journey, both mother and daughter clung to the hope that their shared strength and dignity would help them rise above the cruelty of a few, affirming that respect and kindness should always prevail. As the flight settled into a steady altitude, the atmosphere in the cabin began to shift from mild irritation to palpable tension. Flight attendant Darlene's behavior, already laced with an undercurrent of disdain, escalated in subtle yet unmistakable ways. With every soft-spoken command, she seemed to grow increasingly impatient with the young girl, Imani, whose innocent chatter and wide-eyed wonder had once lit up the cabin. Darlene's eyes narrowed as she leaned in closer, and in a harsh, hushed whisper that barely reached the ears of those nearby, she ordered, "Keep quiet, or I'll have to ask you to stop." The threat, though muted, carried an edge that sent a chill through Imani's small frame. Monique, Imani's protective mother, immediately sensed that the situation was deteriorating. She exchanged anxious glances with nearby passengers who had begun to notice the disturbing change in Darlene's tone. The once routine interactions had taken on an air of hostility that was entirely uncalled for. Every time Imani attempted to speak or laugh in delight, Darlene's disapproving glares and curt commands grew sharper. The cumulative effect was a heavy silence that swallowed the usual hum of conversation, leaving Imani visibly upset and Monique's heart aching with worry. From his seat a few rows away, Travis, an off-duty FBI agent traveling quietly among the passengers, observed the unfolding scene with increasing alarm. Initially, he had dismissed Darlene's behavior as a momentary lapse in professionalism, but as her tone became more severe and her actions more pointed, his instincts told him that something far more troubling was at play. He watched as Darlene's face tightened with anger whenever Imani's bright voice broke through the ambient cabin noise. It was as if she was determined to silence not only the child but also any spark of joy that might brighten the cramped space. Travis's concern grew with every whispered command Darlene issued. He discreetly began noting the details, the way her eyes flicked dismissively toward Imani's yellow dress and how her posture radiated an unchecked prejudice. Even the murmurs of disapproval from nearby passengers confirmed his worst suspicions. Though still off-duty, Travis knew that his training compelled him to be alert to such red flags, particularly when a vulnerable child was involved. By the time the flight reached its midpoint, the tension had reached a boiling point. Passengers huddled in hushed conversation, and the air was heavy with unspoken worry. Monique's efforts to comfort Imani were steadily undermined by Darlene's persistent and harsh admonishments. Recognizing the danger of the situation escalating further, Travis made a silent decision to prepare for possible intervention. He began texting a colleague discreetly, alerting them to the unfolding scene, all the while keeping a vigilant eye on Darlene. In that moment, the cramped cabin of the aircraft transformed into a quiet battleground between unchecked bias and the innocence of youth. Imani's small figure, shrinking beneath the weight of unkind words, symbolized the collateral damage of prejudice, a damage that Travis was determined not to let continue unchecked. The stage was now set for the crisis that would soon demand action, as the flight inched closer to its destination and the tension threatened to burst forth at any moment. As the flight carried on, the tension that had been building in the cabin finally reached a breaking point. In a moment of unbridled anger, Darlene, the flight attendant whose earlier dismissive behavior had already unnerved many, suddenly lashed out. Without warning, she struck Imani, the 8-year-old girl, in a swift, jarring motion that sent a ripple of shock through the entire cabin. The sharp impact elicited gasps from nearby passengers and left Imani frozen, tears welling in her eyes as confusion and fear took hold. Monique, Imani's mother, recoiled in horror. Her heart pounded as she instinctively reached out to shield her daughter from further harm. The air in the cabin grew heavy with disbelief and tension. The routine hum of the engines now provided a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding among the passengers. At that very moment, Travis, an off-duty FBI agent who had been quietly observing the situation, sprang into action. Sensing that the situation was spiraling dangerously out of control, he quickly moved down the aisle with a calm yet authoritative stride. "Everyone, please remain calm," he announced, his voice steady and commanding as he identified himself as an FBI agent. His words cut through the shocked murmurs, and within seconds, he reached Darlene, who still stood in a state of stunned aggression. With a practiced efficiency honed through years of training, Travis quickly subdued Darlene, restraining her firmly to prevent any further outburst. Passengers looked on in silent awe as he skillfully diffused the escalating crisis. His measured, decisive actions reassured the frightened onlookers, and soon, other members of the crew moved in to assist, helping to secure the area and maintain order. Monique rushed to Imani's side, gathering her trembling daughter into a protective embrace. "It's all right, sweetheart," she whispered softly, though her voice betrayed the lingering shock of what had just transpired. Imani, still disoriented and tearful, clutched her cherished stuffed giraffe as if it could somehow mend the sudden fracture of her innocence. In the aftermath, the cabin slowly began to settle into a cautious calm. Travis continued to keep a close watch on Darlene, ensuring that she remained restrained until additional security personnel could take over. He spoke briefly with the flight attendants, instructing them on next steps and urging everyone to prioritize the safety and well-being of all passengers, especially the most vulnerable. For those on board, the incident served as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of unchecked bias and anger. What should have been a routine flight had been marred by a single act of aggression, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of those who witnessed it. As the aircraft resumed its journey toward its destination, conversations buzzed quietly about the need for greater empathy and more rigorous staff training in handling stressful situations. Travis's swift intervention not only prevented further harm but also restored a semblance of order and safety to the cabin. Although Imani's tear-streaked face would remain a powerful symbol of the day's events, the decisive actions of Travis and the subsequent support from Monique and the crew affirmed that, even in moments of crisis, compassion and firm action could help mend broken trust and pave the way for a safer, more respectful environment in the skies. Travis, the off-duty FBI agent, immediately sprang into action when he witnessed Darlene's sudden, unwarranted strike against Imani. In that split second, the entire cabin seemed to freeze, the startled gasps of passengers, the tense silence of nearby crew, and the unmistakable shock on Imani's tear-filled face. Monique, Imani's mother, could only cry out in horror as she clutched her daughter, her heart pounding with fear and anger. Without missing a beat, Travis advanced through the aisle with a calm determination that belied the gravity of the situation. "Please, step back," Travis commanded firmly, his voice cutting through the confusion. His eyes locked onto Darlene, whose face had twisted into a mix of shock and defiance. As she staggered slightly from the force of her own aggression, Travis positioned himself between her and Imani, ensuring that the vulnerable child was shielded from any further harm. With swift precision born of years of training, Travis grabbed Darlene's arm and applied a controlled hold, preventing her from retaliating. "I'm here to help," he assured both Darlene and the onlookers, his tone authoritative yet measured. Even as Darlene began to protest, her voice rising as she insisted, "She provoked me. I was just trying to keep the cabin quiet." Travis maintained his firm grip, his focus solely on Imani's safety and restoring order in the cabin. Throughout the ensuing moments, passengers watched in silent disbelief as Travis methodically worked to subdue Darlene. His hands, steady and practiced, maneuvered to secure her wrists with a makeshift restraint until the in-flight security team could be alerted. Despite her attempts to wriggle free and justify her actions, Travis's calm persistence left no room for argument. "Your behavior is unacceptable," he stated, his voice unwavering as he spoke directly to Darlene. "Right now, our priority is the safety of this child." Travis's intervention not only halted further aggression but also restored a semblance of calm. Flight attendants, previously caught off guard, began to regroup under his guidance, ensuring that Monique and Imani were both comforted and escorted to a quieter section of the cabin. Monique's relief was palpable as she gathered Imani into her arms, whispering words of reassurance. "It's all right, darling. You're safe now," she murmured, her voice trembling yet hopeful. In the midst of the commotion, Travis continued to speak with quiet authority. "I need everyone to remain calm," he instructed, addressing the surrounding passengers who now watched with concern. He radioed for additional support, requesting that the captain and on-duty security be informed immediately. Each instruction was delivered in a measured tone, designed to de-escalate the situation rather than inflame it further. Darlene, still struggling against the restraint, launched into a series of half-hearted protests. "I was only following protocol," she argued, her voice edged with both anger and fear as she tried to twist free. But Travis, fully aware of the implications of her actions, refused to relent. "Protocol does not justify assault," he replied sternly, his eyes not leaving hers. "Any further resistance will only lead to more serious consequences." The atmosphere in the cabin began to shift as passengers witnessed the unfolding drama. Some offered supportive looks toward Monique and Imani, while others murmured their approval of Travis's decisive action. The calm, professional manner in which he handled the crisis served as a stark contrast to Darlene's chaotic and misguided behavior. Within minutes, additional security personnel arrived, easing Travis's burden as they took over the restraint of Darlene and escorted her toward the front of the plane. Travis briefly exchanged words with the captain, ensuring that a full report would be filed once the flight landed. His primary concern remained the well-being of Imani, who, though still shaken, was now safely cradled by her mother. As order was gradually restored in the cabin, Travis continued to monitor the situation until the aircraft touched down at Grand Coast Airport. His intervention had not only prevented further harm but had also signaled to all on board that even in moments of deep-seated prejudice and unchecked anger, decisive, compassionate action could safeguard the innocent. For Monique and Imani, Travis's swift and unwavering protection became a beacon of hope amid an otherwise harrowing experience, a testament to the power of standing up for what is right, even in the midst of chaos. After the plane touched down at Grand Coast Airport, the atmosphere shifted from tense apprehension to a focused urgency among the airline's management. Jordan West, who had traveled incognito with his twin daughters, Jasmine and Jade, now emerged into the busy terminal, his identity as one of Sinharba Airways' owners finally known to those around him. As he and his daughters moved toward the VIP lounge, hushed whispers followed in their wake, whispers that would soon force a reckoning with long-standing biases. Inside the operations center, senior manager Kevin Delgado convened an impromptu meeting with a select group of executives and crew members. Reports had already begun pouring in from multiple sources. Several passengers had noted that flight attendant Paula Wilkins had been unusually critical during the flight, questioning the family's boarding passes and making dismissive remarks about their casual attire. Delgado's review of the in-flight recordings confirmed what many had suspected. Paula's behavior was not merely a lapse in professionalism, but an overt display of bias that singled out Jordan West's family, despite their valid first-class reservations. As Delgado recounted the incident, the tone in the room grew somber. "We have evidence that Paula's conduct deviated significantly from our standard protocols," he said, his voice measured but firm. "Not only did she question their tickets, but she also made several offhand comments that belittled the family. This isn't acceptable under any circumstances." The room fell silent as each member absorbed the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, in the terminal, Jordan West had taken a moment to reflect on the uncomfortable events of the flight. Despite his calm demeanor, he could not ignore the sting of having been treated with undue suspicion, all because of an outdated expectation of how first-class passengers should look. He had chosen to travel anonymously to observe genuine service interactions, and what he saw was a microcosm of a larger, systemic issue that needed addressing. Back at Sinharba's headquarters, Delgado informed Paula that a formal review of her performance was underway. When Paula was called into the meeting room, her initial defensiveness quickly gave way to a dawning realization of the consequences of her actions. "I followed what I believed were the guidelines," she began, her tone tentative, "but I see now that my behavior was influenced by my own assumptions. I let my personal bias cloud my judgment." The apology that followed was heartfelt, though tinged with regret for having allowed such prejudices to affect the service experience. In response to the incident, the airline's management wasted no time in implementing corrective measures. Kevin Delgado announced that Sinharba Airways would be launching a comprehensive retraining program focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. "We must ensure that every passenger is treated with the dignity they deserve," Delgado stated. "Our staff will receive updated training on recognizing and overcoming unconscious biases, and we will reinforce our commitment to professional, respectful service regardless of a passenger's appearance or background." Jordan West, in a brief statement to the press later that day, expressed cautious optimism. "While it is unfortunate that our family had to experience such treatment, I believe that this incident has opened the door for positive change," he said. "Sinharba Airways is taking concrete steps to address these issues, and I am confident that our renewed focus on inclusivity will lead to a better experience for all our passengers." His measured words resonated not only within the airline but also among passengers and industry observers, signaling a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at Sanharba began to shift. Internal audits were conducted, and feedback from crew members was gathered to identify further areas in need of improvement. Training sessions on cultural sensitivity and respectful customer service were scheduled, and supervisors were tasked with ensuring that these new standards were rigorously followed. As a result, some passengers later remarked on a noticeable improvement in the courtesy and professionalism of the flight crew. For Jordan West and his daughters, the incident served as a bittersweet lesson, a reminder that even in a privileged setting, biases can creep in and mar what should be a seamless experience. Yet, through the actions taken by Sanharba's management, there was hope that the airline was moving toward a future defined by fairness and mutual respect. The changes promised that day underscored an important truth: true progress comes from acknowledging mistakes and taking deliberate steps to ensure they are not repeated. Over the weeks and months following that harrowing flight, Imani's journey toward emotional healing became both a challenging and transformative process for her and her mother, Monique. Initially, the incident left Imani visibly withdrawn. Her once bright eyes, which had sparkled with childlike wonder, now often held a trace of sadness and uncertainty. Monique, deeply affected by the events and the harsh treatment they endured, vowed that her daughter would not have to carry the weight of that day alone. Shortly after returning home, Monique sought professional help to support Imani. They began attending sessions with Dr. Rivera, a compassionate psychologist renowned for her work with children who had experienced trauma. In a gentle, welcoming office adorned with colorful art and soft lighting, Dr. Rivera created a safe space where Imani felt comfortable expressing her feelings. Through drawing, storytelling, and guided play, Imani gradually opened up about the incident, even if in fragments. Although the memory was painful, Dr. Rivera's patient encouragement helped her articulate the confusing emotions of fear, sadness, and betrayal. Monique sat nearby during many of these sessions, her presence a constant reminder that her daughter was loved and protected. As the weeks turned into months, the healing process began to show its subtle signs. Imani's drawings, once darkened by shadows of distress, slowly transformed into images filled with gentle light and hopeful scenes. She began to smile more freely during sessions and even started to talk about her dreams of drawing pictures of happy families and soaring birds. Monique, too, experienced healing. Through support groups with other parents who had faced similar challenges, she found solidarity and strength. Sharing her story helped her process her own grief and anger, while also inspiring others to advocate for change. Outside the therapy sessions, Monique made a concerted effort to rebuild a sense of normalcy and joy in their everyday lives. They resumed simple routines like reading bedtime stories, taking long walks in the park, and enjoying meals together. Family outings to museums, local theaters, and community events gradually replaced the tense silence that had once overshadowed their return home. Each shared laugh and tender moment reinforced the idea that healing was possible, even after the most distressing experiences. The support network that had formed around Monique and Imani extended well beyond the professional realm. Neighbors, friends, and even some sympathetic colleagues from Monique's workplace reached out with kind words and gestures. A close family friend, Mr. Thompson, organized a small celebration in honor of Imani's resilience, a day filled with music, art, and the joyful presence of other children. These communal acts of kindness played a crucial role in helping Imani feel safe again, teaching her that while the memory of that flight might never vanish completely, it could be overshadowed by an abundance of love and support. As Imani's confidence grew, she began to express herself more openly about the incident. In her school, she participated in a creative writing contest, penning a heartfelt story about overcoming fear and embracing one's inner strength. Her work, which spoke of finding light after darkness, earned her recognition from teachers and peers alike. For Monique, each step forward by Imani was a victory, a reminder that healing is not linear, but a mosaic of small, significant moments. By the end of that difficult year, both Imani and Monique had transformed their pain into a source of empowerment. Imani's laughter returned, and she no longer flinched at reminders of the past. Instead, she found comfort in her art and the support of those who cared for her. Monique, inspired by the progress they had made, began advocating for better training and support systems for children who faced discrimination. Their journey, though marked by an indelible scar, ultimately became a testament to resilience, compassion, and the transformative power of healing. In the soft glow of a spring afternoon, as Imani drew happily in her sketchbook under the watchful eye of her mother, it was clear that they had not only survived a traumatic ordeal but had also blossomed into a stronger, more compassionate family, ready to face the future with hope and dignity. After the turbulent events of that flight, a quiet but steadfast support network began to form around Aisha and her mother, Marina. In the days that followed, Grant, a vigilant off-duty FBI agent who had intervened during the incident, made it his mission to ensure that the family received every resource they needed to heal and move forward. Grant checked in with Marina regularly, offering not only words of encouragement but also practical assistance, from arranging counseling sessions to connecting them with local community support groups. His compassionate follow-up provided a sense of security that both Aisha and Marina had desperately needed after that traumatic ordeal. Marina, though still reeling from the shock, gradually began to rebuild her strength. She found solace in the consistent kindness shown by Grant and other community members who rallied around them. With Grant's guidance, Marina enrolled Aisha in a specialized therapy program led by Dr. Rivera, a caring psychologist renowned for working with children who had experienced emotional trauma. In the safe, welcoming environment of Dr. Rivera's office, Aisha slowly started to speak about the day's events. Her drawings, once tainted by dark images of anger and pain, began to evolve into hopeful depictions of light and resilience. As the weeks turned into months, Grant maintained his presence in their lives. He would drop by Marina's modest apartment with a reassuring smile and sometimes even share a cup of coffee with them at a nearby cafe. Every visit reinforced the message that they were not alone, that there were people willing to stand by them during their recovery. For Marina, Grant's empathy was a lifeline. His unwavering commitment, even after the incident had faded from the headlines, became a constant reminder that justice and kindness could coexist. Meanwhile, as Aisha grew older, the painful memories of that day transformed into a source of strength and purpose. Now a determined young woman with an unyielding spirit, Aisha decided to channel her trauma into a force for good. Motivated by the support she received during her childhood, she pursued higher education in social work and eventually became a passionate advocate for social justice. Aisha dedicated herself to confronting prejudice head-on, organizing workshops and speaking at schools about the importance of empathy, inclusiveness, and the need to stand up against bias. In her workshops, Aisha recounted her own experiences, not to dwell on the past, but to illustrate the transformative power of compassion. She explained how the timely intervention of Grant and the unwavering support of her mother had turned a moment of deep pain into a turning point in her life. "I learned that our scars can guide us," she told groups of attentive students, "if we let them. They remind us that every act of kindness, every moment of support, can rebuild what was broken." Her words resonated widely, sparking discussions among young people about the importance of challenging stereotypes and fostering an environment of mutual respect. Grant, now more than just an intervening agent, had evolved into a trusted mentor for Aisha and a symbol of hope for many. His continued support not only strengthened the bond within their family but also inspired him to participate in broader community initiatives. He began collaborating with local law enforcement and nonprofit organizations, working to create better protocols for dealing with incidents of prejudice and to ensure that victims like Aisha received prompt care and justice. As Aisha's advocacy grew, so did her influence. She organized community forums that brought together diverse voices, from activists to educators, to discuss practical strategies for confronting bias in everyday life. Through her relentless efforts, Aisha not only transformed her own pain into a beacon of hope but also helped foster a culture where every person was encouraged to stand up against hatred and injustice. In time, the story of Aisha, Marina, and Grant became a testament to resilience. Their journey from a moment of unprovoked violence to a future filled with purpose and empowerment served as a powerful reminder that even the darkest experiences can ignite a spark for change. And as Aisha continued to lead workshops and inspire others, she carried with her the lessons of her past, a legacy of strength, unity, and the enduring impact of compassion. Years after that painful flight, Imani had transformed her early trauma into a source of strength and advocacy. Now in her mid-20s, the once vulnerable girl had grown into a determined activist, committed to confronting prejudice and fostering social justice. Drawing on the memories of her childhood, when unkind assumptions and cruelty marred what should have been an innocent experience, Imani dedicated herself to ensuring that no other child would have to endure similar pain. Imani began her journey by speaking at local community centers and schools. She shared her story openly, not to dwell on the past, but to illustrate how the scars of discrimination can fuel the desire for change. "We all deserve to be seen for who we are, not just how we appear," she would say, her voice resonant with both empathy and conviction. Her personal narrative, once a source of deep personal hurt, had become a beacon of hope for many who felt marginalized or misunderstood. In her advocacy workshops, Imani used creative expression as a tool for healing. Encouraging participants to draw, write, and share their own experiences, she demonstrated that art could be a powerful means to confront and dismantle societal biases. With each session, she witnessed the transformative power of vulnerability. Young people, who had long suffered in silence, found their voices through Imani's guidance, and community leaders began to take note of the pressing need for greater empathy and inclusion. Monique, Imani's supportive mother, watched her daughter's evolution with a mixture of pride and relief. The long journey of healing that they had embarked upon together had not been easy, but it had paved the way for positive change not just in their lives, but in the broader community as well. Monique often joined Imani at public events, where the duo worked side by side to champion policies that promoted fairness and diversity, both within the airline industry and beyond. Over time, Imani's efforts garnered wider attention. Media outlets began featuring her story, and her workshops inspired local leaders to implement diversity training programs in schools and workplaces. Her advocacy underscored the belief that confronting one's own biases was essential to creating a more just society. In every forum, Imani's message was clear: transformation begins with understanding, and even the deepest wounds can lead to the blossoming of resilience and hope. By channeling her past into purposeful activism, Imani not only healed herself but also ignited a movement, one that encouraged others to stand up against discrimination and celebrate the inherent dignity of every individual. Her journey, marked by courage and empathy, became a powerful reminder that the strength of a community is measured by how it uplifts its most vulnerable members.